Welcome back to my YouTube channel, everybody. My guest today is Mr. Malcolm Nance, who's a military expert, very well known in the United States, and is also the author of a new book called They Want to Kill Americans, which is about the ideology and Donald Trump's probably upcoming insurgency. Thanks for your time, Malcolm. Thanks for joining me today.
Well, I'm really glad to be here. And let me correct you right off the bat. We are in the insurgency. The subtitle of that book was changed from the coming Trump insurgency to the Trump insurgency because America is already involved.
Can you give us some background about your book, what it is about, and what is this insurgency you're talking about?
Well, I started this book in August of 2020, about 3 months before the election. And the proposal that I had made was that win, lose, or draw, the United States was going to be going into a very low-grade political and paramilitary campaign of trouble and unrest. And that's what an insurgency is. It's not just one flash in the pan explosion or revolution. It's a series of events that can be low-grade or high-grade, where a political group decides to take its action out into the streets, as well as fight in the halls of power in order to discredit or destabilize a government so that they can come back into power. And I famously predicted 3 days after the election on a very big television show in the United States called Real Time with Bill Maher, where Bill was talking about, hey, now we need to bring the Republicans back into the fold. We need to understand what their complaints and grievances are now that liberals control the government. I said, that's not going to happen. What's going to happen is they are going to arm themselves, and they are going to move both politically and paramilitary to destabilize the Biden administration if they let it happen at all. 62 days later would come the attack on the Capitol. 40,000 people attended the rally, 10,000 people marched on the Capitol, and as many as 3,000 people entered the building with the intent to overthrow the American government. In their way, it was supposedly, they didn't bring weapons, although there were a lot of weapons present. They were going to take it over with people power, stop the vote, which would have certified the election. But you're talking about a mob. They could have set fire to the building. We saw lots of vandalism. And most importantly, the part where they tore down the American flag and replaced it with the flag of Donald Trump. This is the nature of the deranged ideology that is the current American, what I call the Titus, Titus, the Trump insurgency in the United States.
Did it start with the claims that the election was stolen and with the assault on Capitol Hill, or was it already ongoing?
Oh, it was already ongoing. I mean, there's a lot of evidence, and I write quite a bit about it in my book, that there were many groups in the United States, these armed militant groups, these militias, the groups like the Oath Keepers, the Proud Boys. They had been coordinating for months towards assisting the Trump administration take control of the government. And in fact, the head of the Oath Keepers, Stuart Rhodes, in his recent indictment, in statements that I had already had in the book, that it took 2 years for him to be arrested and indicted, he had made statements to the effect that Donald Trump needed to use these paramilitary groups as a tool, and so that he could have deniability in overthrowing the government. And as Rhodes said, all Trump has to do is declare martial law and ask us to assist, and they would get their weapons and just sort of like self-deputized armed militias take over the control of the government. And that was why he was convicted of seditious conspiracy, a conspiracy to topple the American government. But he always thought, and many others, most of the people who were there, thought they were there to do Donald Trump's bidding, to stop what they thought wasn't the steal of the election. They only really got into that when the election was lost, but they were propelled well before that to assist Trump in overthrowing the government.
What I'm seeing now for the first time is that his followers are very radicalized. How can that be? Is it the side effect of social media? You're laughing
You know,
already.
the funny thing is, you say that you're seeing it now. I mean, this book is called "They Want to Kill Americans." It took a year for this book to come to print, principally because there's a
Oh,
Chinese print
okay.
shortage. But
By
I
now,
currently,
I mean in the last 5, 10 years,
yeah,
something
okay,
I
let's
haven't
call
seen that with former presidents.
yeah, but you haven't seen it before. This radicalization has been going on for well over 2 decades. But what was missing was this component that the American public, and certainly news media and social media, the fledgling social media, still believed in the common decency of America and still believed that patriotism involved you actually working for America and not for yourself. It's really the rise of Donald Trump and the weaponization of the aspects, the racist, white supremacist, hatred filled aspects that he brought with him that allowed white America, white American men, principally, 76% of them, to believe that it was okay to be indecent. It was okay to be dishonorable. It was okay to attack and hurt and target your neighbors. And he would say that in his rallies. Oh, go ahead and beat that guy. Or, there was a time when cops could actually hurt you. And by saying it out loud and becoming president of the United States, he gave a permission slip. He gave permission for people to be mean and hateful and to get rid of these values that had developed since World War II, that everyone had to work towards equality. No, it was about, we can now take control of everything because I'm president. And 35% of us can dictate to the other 65% of America what we think is right, and you'll do it because we'll threaten you or we'll use the system against you.
But how can people be so gullible, first off, to
Oh,
believe that the election was stolen, and also so determined to start storming the Capitol?
yeah. How can people be so gullible? Well, there's a great book called Hitler's Willing Executioners, which talks about the myth that everything that the Nazis had done was only done by the Nazis themselves. And it explains very clearly that, look, Hitler won power. Hitler came to power in a democratic election. A lot of people tend to forget this. And what he did, as the trope goes, Hitler won with 1/3 of the electorate to convince the other third of the electorate to start mass murdering the last third of the electorate. And if they can, the man was an incredible orator, and Donald Trump was an admirer of Hitler's oratory skill. And the belief that you can convince someone who's like you that they can have what you have, right? You're a rich man, the people who are listening to you are poor, but did you take on and champion their grievances, and that you're the man to get them out of the hole? We have this saying that, the Walmart shoppers, the poor white lower middle class Americans who support Donald Trump with their heart, with their wallet, with money, spending money on flags and spending, thousands of dollars in fuel to go from rally to rally to get that feeling, that Nuremberg rally feeling, right? That you are part of something bigger than yourself. And Donald Trump is your avatar. Donald Trump is your tribal chief. Donald Trump is the person who speaks for you, right? And you need to speak for him. I mean, these people are not very wealthy. But, there's that saying, everyone who supports Donald Trump, the rich billionaire, is just a millionaire who is down on their luck. And if they only support Trump, they'll be like him. They'll all have a beautiful wife, or, beautiful trophy wife. They'll all have skyscrapers and all these things. I don't know how the psychology of this brainwashing works. I'll leave that to experts on, cults and other groups like that. But it worked here in America in the same way that it worked in Nazi Germany, the same way it worked in Italy with Benito Mussolini, right? One of my favorite lines, by the way, about decent people standing against this. came from an old movie that was in the 1940s called Sahara, a Humphrey Bogart movie where he's a tank crew in the North Africa, and they capture an Italian. And the Italian guy is actually very sympathetic to the Americans, right? And to the point where they don't guard him. And they shoot down a German plane and they capture a hardcore Nazi pilot. And the Italian and this soldier who supposedly is fighting for Mussolini and the Nazi have an argument, which ends up tragically for the Italian. But when he stands up and he says, he goes, we are not like you, okay? You can dress like a fascist. You can act like a fascist. You can give a speech like a fascist. He says, but we can't do that in our hearts in Italy because we're just simple men. For something like this, you need an artist. And Adolf Hitler is an artist, right? And the Nazi murders him because he spoke out against Hitler and he wouldn't side with that. In the hearts, I think, of most people, even, in Italy. I mean, you just elected a hardcore right prime minister, but your parliament isn't. The average person isn't like that. I lived in Italy. I lived in Sicily. I lived in Sardinia. I lived in, Naples, Catania, and La Maddalena, and I almost married a woman from Treviso. Italians really aren't like, right? You're not really a Mussolini. You're all not 5 stars. You're all not Forza Italia, right? Because you have big hearts. And some point, you're going to realize that what people say to you in your face has to match what's in your heart. And in Donald Trump's America, the people that support him, that hatred, that matches what's in their heart.
How organized are Trump's followers? Should we fear more militias, lone wolves?
Yes. You got to fear militias, lone wolves, and as we call them, known wolves, right? People who are out there. But the most dangerous part of Trump's world is his social media propaganda organization, the Steve Bannons. And I call attention to Steve Bannon because Bannon was a former Navy officer who, like many neo-Nazis in the United States, they were all former military and somehow got to admiring the discipline of the Nazis, right? But Bannon is a man who admired a philosopher of Vladimir Putin, a guy by the name of Alexander Dugin, who is still here. His daughter was recently murdered, believed to be, it was an assassination attempt on his life by Putin. But Bannon believes in this philosophy of neo-Eurasianism, where Russia becomes the central pole to the West, to Eastern Europe and the Atlantic Alliance, and United States becomes a vassal state led by a autocrat, a fascist, ruler, which is what he saw in Trump or the next Trump, to the point where he tried to come to Italy and buy or lease a monastery in northern Italy, where he said he would create a school of fascist gladiators, where he would train fascists all around the world to go out and create nations that would create mini Mussolinis, mini Vladimir Putins, mini Adolf Hitlers. And this is the same guy who went to France soon after that, and in a speech in front of Marine Le Pen's group said, when they call you a racist, embrace that. Say you're a racist. Love it. When they call you a fascist, embrace that. Say you're a fascist. None of this works in America, except amongst Donald Trump's followers. There is always going to be a hardcore of people who are ignorant, who are hateful, and are mean. But it is the machine around them, the Ben Shapiros, all right, the Charlie Kirks, the Candace Owens, the Josh Rogans, and I'm going from the mildest to the strongest, right? The Steve Bannons that now have created an information entertainment sphere for very little minds. And I'm now a great intellectual, right? I put my body in the defense of democracy and true Americanism where my mouth is, right? These guys are just talking heads, but they now have figured out the formula for changing and technically brainwashing the minds of good people and making them think, maybe it is worth mass murdering my neighbor to get what I want. That's where the real danger comes in. But are they organized? only as organized as the entire right-wing machine that had the presidency until recently.
And what is the role of the QAnon conspiracy theory here in motivating all these people?
Oh my God, QAnon is. Look, if you don't know what QAnon is, let me read something to you, because this is quite possibly one of the best things I have ever written. And it's not about QAnon itself. It's how I end the paragraph when I describe QAnon, that, you know, it's really a crazy, crazy ideology. And now, look, you just had an attempted coup d'etat against the government of Germany by people who were anti-vax QAnon conspiracy theorists who thought January 6th was a good model to get your rich noblemen together along with military people and overthrow the democratically elected government of Germany. And a lot of it is based on QAnon ideology. So I want to find where I describe what is QAnon, okay? And I write, so what is QAnon? I will tell you in harrowing detail, but first I must couch this in proper technical intelligence community terminology so that there are no mistaking the gravity of my warning. QAnon missives, which are the letters that are sent by QAnon that people read, QAnon missives are completely and totally batshit crazy rantings of someone in the internet who has no idea about how government or the intelligence community works. They spout the worst and oldest conspiracy theories that literally caused a world war and the Holocaust. So, what exactly is QAnon? Right? It says, where is it? QAnon, I'm going to describe it. QAnon is the belief that there is a secret intelligence organization in America, which is helping the hero of this story, Donald Trump, stop liberals, because liberals have, I'm not joking, a secret underground network of cities and military bases connected by high-speed underground rail that are taking all the kidnapped children in the United States and the world, killing them and drinking their blood to stay young. I shit you not. That is what they think. That is what QAnon is. And that Donald Trump is the hero of this story where he's stopping pedophiles like Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama and the Democratic Party from kidnapping their children and keeping them safe. And they believe that a thing called a day is coming, called the storm, where they will mass murder all liberals in America. That's QAnon. Now, I've been around. I've spent 40 years in and out of US intelligence. I've seen a lot of crazy things in my life. 20 million Americans say they believe in this. 20 million. The first people into the Capitol were people wearing QAnon t-shirts. The first person on the dais of the Senate was dressed as the QAnon shaman, the man who believed in all of this. They all thought that January 6th was the day of the storm, that they were going to go in there and kill everybody. It's the craziest thing I've ever heard. Second only to the Holocaust. These people are nuts, and they were led by some fraud on the internet who said he was a super secret spy, all right, who says that liberals must be mass murdered. And the funny thing is, he took most of his stuff from a book called The Turner Diaries, which was the book that Timothy McVeigh used to attack the Oklahoma City building in the 1990s and killed 186 Americans. This is crazy. But guess what? They're a worldwide ideology now. And they just tried the basic beliefs. They're anti-vax, right? They believe that there's a global conspiracy to kidnap all the children, and that liberalism is dangerous, and the only way to save their families is to follow hardcore autocrats and overthrow your government through mass murder.
Well, Malcolm, 1.5 years ago or so, a militia also tried to kidnap Governor Gretchen Whitmer. Was that part of the insurgency too?
Yes, it absolutely was. All of these little things you see with these small conspiracies of white men who have all self-anointed uh, themselves as their own brand of special forces soldier who are going to save democracy. Yeah, the plot to kidnap Governor Whitmer, whose only thing that she did to upset them was to make sure people wore masks so they wouldn't spread a lethal million-person killing virus, was that she looked out for their health care. And that was too much for them. Man, the Michigan plot is amazing. But more importantly, that plot to kidnap Governor Gretchen Whitmer, which I detail in my book, some of them got off and others were convicted, was Plan B. Plan A was not to kidnap Governor Whitmer, put her on trial in a secret base in Wisconsin, and then execute her on television. That were a live stream on the internet. That was Plan B. Plan A was they were trying to gather 200 men to storm the State House when it was in session, take control of the State House, let go all the Republicans, disarm law enforcement, start having trials, and execute all the Democratic liberals in the House of Representatives of Michigan by hanging their bodies out the windows. That was Plan A. And that happened, they had broken that plot 4 months or 3 months before the January 6th incident. So as an intelligence and counterterrorism professional, as soon as I heard Plan A, and saw that there was going to be a rally against the Capitol and a march on the Capitol, you would think that you would have said, hey, in Michigan, they planned on storming that building. Maybe we should take some precautions that that doesn't happen to the United States Capitol. Ignored. Now, I knew about it. That tells me that everybody else in counterterrorism should have known about it.
Definitely makes sense. Well, let me ask you the key question here. What is the role of Russia's disinformation campaign in sustaining these Trump's followers?
Yeah, but not so much as it used to be. Long ago, in 2018, I wrote a book called The Plot to Destroy Democracy, how Putin and his spies are undermining America and dismantling the West. For a very long time, Vladimir Putin put a lot of resources into his intelligence agencies to essentially try to undermine American and American style and European democracy. He funded many political organizations in Europe, including the Five Star Movement, and and other groups throughout Europe, Germany, Greece, Hungary, Sweden, Netherlands, and Marine and in France. United Russia funded these groups directly, and they had alliances. The government of Austria had a direct alliance with the government that was established by a series of Nazi SS officers in 1952 that won power in 2016. They created formal ties between the Austrian government and United Russia. Those days have stepped back. Russia, ever since 2018, has realized that they don't have to pay for campaigns to go out and destabilize governments. Right now, Donald Trump and the system in the United States, their level of derangement has amplified and has eclipsed anything Russia could do to destabilize democracy. This is a self-starting autocracy here. So poor Russia, the best they could do is invade Ukraine, right? Physically put it on the line and see that they're not winning that way. But Donald Trump and his America First movement, which, by the way, in case your listeners don't know it, was the pro-Nazi movement in the United States pre-World War II, was called America First. And that's where Donald Trump took it from. So in case you're wondering what their real values are, there you go.
Well, Malcolm, is there still a way to stop them, or are we past the point of no return?
No, there's a way to stop them. And unfortunately, I'm asked this all the time. What will it take? Two questions. What will it take for the Republicans to to see themselves as wrong. They don't see themselves as wrong. They see themselves as heroes. When they attacked the Capitol in Washington, they were shouting 1776, essentially revolution. They don't even they're so ignorant. They didn't even understand that that building represents all of that revolution, the culmination of American history. And in their mind, they were going to take back America, a made-up fantasy America in their minds that Donald Trump told them about. An all-white America where they wouldn't have to relinquish any power to blacks or women or people of color or minorities, and definitely not to those gays. An America where they're going to have to go, they could step back in history and whitewash, rewrite all the laws because they want the laws to work for only them, white America. Now, the problem is this pesky thing called democracy keeps getting in the way. And these votes, these elections, especially the last one, which literally erased all of their gains in the Trump era. Yes, they have control of Congress by 6 votes. But what if there's a critical incident? And I'm afraid to say there will be a critical incident where some group will mass murder other Americans in an attempt to essentially rewrite history through violence. And that's going to happen. I'm afraid to say it will happen. My poor publisher goes, oh, your book came up, it did very well, but how do we sustain it? I go, listen, you don't have to sustain anything. This book is called They Want to Kill Americans. And those Americans I'm talking about, they're going to do it because they are starting to feel like they have no other options. And look, they run everything. They live by privilege, right? But at some point, they're going to figure out a scapegoat. Anti-Semitism, anti-Jewish sentiment in the United States is at a 20-year high. It's almost normalized, right? You have Kanye West, a black guy. All right, blacks and Jews are tight like this in the United States. The entire civil rights movement was pushed by liberal, progressive American Jews. We owe them. But to have this crazy multi-billionaire come out there and say, well, Hitler was great. We got issues back here in the United States. But it's when the collective apathy of the United States gets washed away, where we can actually stand up and say to people, hey, that's not the way we are. Let's vote these people out. That's the only way. That's the best way to defeat their agenda. Now, that's going to push them to violence, though.
There's one scenario that you didn't mention, that is that Trump is not the Republican candidate in 2 years from now for the White House. Isn't it possible?
Yeah, well, this isn't about Trump anymore. This is about Trumpism. Trumpism is the white supremacist belief that America belongs to the white man and it has privilege that are earned by the very fact that they ethnically cleansed and subdued the United States over 4 centuries, and that no one will be able to take away their power. That is Trumpism. That's the promise he gave to America. If he were to have one cheeseburger too many, all right, and remove himself from the earthly stage, you have Ron DeSantis, governor of Florida, tried to pass a law recently that said that you would be investigated if your child was transgender, right? Passed laws where schools were not allowed to speak about civil rights or Martin Luther King. You have the governor of Texas where they will put you in prison. Your neighbors, and I think this law was just recently challenged as unconstitutional, can turn you in for a $10,000 reward if you tell the government where someone's having an abortion. They've incentivized hatred to the point where you can make money off of it. Now, will this last forever? I don't know. All I know is we're coming to, people ask me all the time, are we going to a civil war? No, we're having a debate about the same things that created civil war. Back in 1850, when they were arguing over whether blacks were a piece of property and that their free labor is what should keep enriching you, and whether you had a right to keep people as enslaved free labor because the money was really good. My great-great-grandparents and their grandparents and their grandparents, the money was just too delicious to let go, right? Free labor, free money. All you had to do is sit in your house and, have mint juleps and work out deals with other white people, and money would flow into you. That debate has never ended, but it's not about that anymore. It's about who owns America. Is it a democracy, or as the Republicans like to say, right? We're not a democracy, we're a republic. Well, these morons are too stupid to open a dictionary to understand that a republic is a democracy in which the rights of the political minority are protected. But they hate the word democracy. They want a dictator. They want autocracy. And my book, The Plot to Destroy Democracy, which I wrote before They Want to Kill Americans, is really about an axis of autocrats aligning the world towards the richest of the rich, the oligarchy. What did Benito Mussolini call fascism? Right? A dictatorship of the extreme right, which is protected and encourages corporatism, right? Where money speaks for the world. We are in a world of oligarchy that funds dictators, which is why the richest man in the world today came out this week and said that he supports the Republicans to come back into power because he believes the Democrats cheated and stole the 2020 election. That man thinks he can say anything in his mouth, in his mind. And he's now going to buy an election. And the only thing that stops it is collective will of the people. There's 340 million Americans. Only 100 million voted. I believe it was 120 million voted. That number may be wrong. But 2/3 of the electorate did not vote. And they will remember the only time they will remember the good old days of when they had rights is when those rights are removed by law. And let me end with my favorite line from the movie Star Wars, right? How does democracy end? To thunderous applause.
Great quote. Thank you, Malcolm. Many thanks for your time, Malcolm, and for your very precious explanations about your book, which I do encourage my viewers and my readers to read because it's very meaningful and interesting.
Well, good. I need to get that translated into Italian.
Yeah, maybe. Well, yes, maybe. That will be very useful, and all your previous ones too.
Yeah, I hope so. All right, well, thank you.
Thanks, everybody, for watching this. See you all next time. Bye-bye.